Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild story, please hit that subscribe button to join our channel for more crazy workplace tales. I'd spent weeks perfecting the quarterly report, pouring my soul into every chart, every number, every word. It was my ticket to a promotion, a chance to shine in front of the CEO and the board. My secretary, Clara, knew how much it meant to me. She'd seen me burning the midnight oil, tweaking slides, and triple-checking data. She'd even brought me coffee during those late nights, always with a smile. So, when the big meeting day arrived, I felt confident. I handed Clara the USB drive with the report, asking her to load it onto the conference room laptop. She nodded, her usual cheerful self, and I didn't think twice about it. The meeting was in an hour, and I was ready to nail it. I walked into the room, greeted the team, and sat down, oblivious to the storm brewing. Little did I know, Clara had other plans. Plans that would turn my world upside down. I trusted her completely. How could I not? She'd been my right hand for years. But trust, as I'd soon learn, can be a dangerous thing in the corporate jungle. The clock ticked closer to showtime, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was my moment. The conference room filled with executives, their faces a mix of boredom and expectation. The CEO, Mr. Hargrove, sat at the head, his piercing gaze scanning the room. I stood up, ready to present, and clicked the laptop to start my slideshow. Nothing happened. The screen stayed blank, and a murmur rippled through the room. I clicked again, my heart rate spiking. Still nothing. I glanced at Clara, who was standing by the door, her face unreadable. "Clara, did you load the file?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She nodded, but her eyes darted away. I opened the laptop's file explorer, empty. My report, my weeks of work, was gone. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I fumbled for words. The board members shifted uncomfortably, and Hargrove's eyes narrowed. I stammered an apology, my mind racing for an explanation. Where was my report? Why wasn't it there? I tried to salvage the moment, pulling up some old data from my email, but it was a mess. The numbers were outdated, the slides unpolished, nothing like the polished report I'd prepared. The board's patience wore thin, and Hargrove's frown deepened with every passing minute. I could feel my promotion slipping away, my reputation crumbling. Clara stood silently, offering no help, no explanation. I caught her glance at another manager, Tom, who smirked slightly. My gut twisted. Was something going on here? I pushed through, stumbling over my words, trying to recall key points from memory. It was a disaster. The board members whispered to each other, and Hargrove tapped his pen impatiently. I felt like I was drowning in that room, my career sinking with me. Clara's silence was deafening, her betrayal slowly dawning on me. How could she do this? Why would she? I had no answers, only a growing sense of dread. Just as I was about to give up, Hargrove raised a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "Enough," he said, his voice like ice. He turned to his assistant, who handed him a folder. My heart stopped as I recognized the cover page. It was my report. The one I'd given Clara. The one that was supposed to be on the laptop. Hargrove held it up, his eyes locked on mine. "Is this yours?" he asked. I nodded, my throat dry, unable to speak. He flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. "Found it in the shredder bin," he said, his voice low but sharp. The room went silent, every eye turning to Clara. Her face paled, her hands trembling slightly. I couldn't believe it. She'd tried to destroy my work? My mind reeled, piecing together her odd behavior, her glance at Tom. This was sabotage. Hargrove's gaze shifted to Clara, and the air in the room grew heavy. "Care to explain?" he asked, his tone leaving no room for excuses. Clara stammered, her usual confidence gone. I must have made a mistake," she said, her voice barely audible. Hargrove didn't buy it. He turned to me, holding up the report. "This is exceptional work," he said, and my heart skipped a beat. But someone didn't want it seen. He called over his assistant, who whispered something in his ear. Clara's eyes widened, and she took a step back. I watched, frozen, as the pieces fell into place. Tom's smirk, Clara's evasiveness, it was a setup. They'd planned to tank my presentation, maybe to boost Tom's chances for the promotion. But Hargrove wasn't fooled. He'd seen through it all. "Clara," Hargrove said, his voice like a guillotine, "you're fired." Effective immediately. Gasps echoed around the room. Clara's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't argue. She grabbed her bag and bolted for the door, leaving a stunned silence behind. Hargrove turned back to me, handing me the report. "Let's try this again," he said, a rare hint of a smile on his face. I took the folder, my hands shaking, and started over. This time, the slides loaded perfectly, and I delivered the presentation of my life. The board nodded along, impressed, and Hargrove even clapped at the end. My career was back on track, but my mind was still on Clara. Why had she done it? What had I missed? The betrayal stung, sharp and deep. After the meeting, I sat in my office, staring at the report, replaying the events in my head. Clara had been my ally, or so I thought. We'd worked together for 3 years, shared laughs, late nights, even personal stories. I'd trusted her with everything, from schedules to sensitive documents. But that glance at Tom kept nagging at me. I pulled up her email history, something I'd never done before. There, buried in a thread, were messages between her and Tom, vague but damning. They'd planned to undermine me, to make Tom look like the better candidate. My report was supposed to disappear, leaving me to flounder. But they hadn't counted on Hargrove's sharp eye, or the shredder bin being checked. I felt a mix of anger and relief. The truth was out, but the cost was high. The next day, the office buzzed with gossip. Clara's firing was the talk of every break room, every hallway. Some pitied her, others called her out for what she'd done. I stayed quiet, focusing on my work, but the whispers followed me. Tom avoided me, his usual swagger gone. I wondered if Hargrove would go after him next, but for now, he was safe. My report had earned me praise, and the promotion was back in play. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Clara had been more than an employee. She'd been a friend. Or so I'd thought. I started double-checking everything, trusting no one. The corporate world felt colder now, more cutthroat. I'd won this round, but at what cost? My faith in people had taken a hit. Weeks passed, and the incident faded from the office chatter, but not from my mind. I got the promotion, a corner office, and a raise, but it felt bittersweet. Every time I walked past Clara's old desk, I felt a pang of something, regret, maybe, or guilt. Should I have seen the signs? Could I have stopped it? I'd never know. Hargrove called me in one day, praising my resilience. He hinted that Tom was on thin ice, but didn't elaborate. I nodded, grateful for his support, but wary. The corporate ladder was a dangerous climb, and I'd learned that the hard way. Allies could turn into enemies overnight. I vowed to keep my guard up, to never be blindsided again. My report had saved me, but it was Hargrove's instinct that sealed Clara's fate. Looking back, I realized how close I'd come to losing everything. One mistake, one act of sabotage, could have ended my career. But it also taught me something valuable. Trust, but verify. I started mentoring a new secretary, training her carefully, watching for any red flags. The office felt different now, like a battlefield where alliances shifted daily. I kept my report close, saving backups on multiple drives, sharing nothing sensitive. Clara's betrayal had changed me, made me sharper, more cautious. I'd survived her scheme, but the scars remained. Hargrove's quick action had saved my reputation, but it was a reminder. In this world, you're only as good as your last win. I was ready for the next challenge, but I'd never forget the lesson. The aftermath of Clara's firing left a strange void in the office. My new secretary, Emily, was efficient but lacked Clara's charm. I missed the easy banter we'd had, but I couldn't let nostalgia cloud my judgment. Every day, I double-checked her work, paranoid about another betrayal. The promotion had boosted my status, but it also painted a target on my back. Colleagues who once smiled now watched me with guarded eyes. Tom, still in his role, avoided meetings where I was present. I heard rumors he was looking for another job, spooked by Hargrove's scrutiny. My report had become legendary in the company, a symbol of my comeback. But it was also a reminder of how fragile success could be. I kept a copy framed on my wall, a trophy and a warning. The corporate game was ruthless, and I was learning its rules fast. Hargrove called me into his office again, this time to discuss a new project. He was impressed with my work and wanted me to lead a high-stakes initiative. It was a huge opportunity, but it came with pressure. I accepted, knowing I couldn't afford to slip up. As we talked, he mentioned Clara in passing, saying she'd been let go from her next job too. I felt a twinge of pity, but it faded quickly. She'd made her choice, and I'd paid the price for her loyalty to Tom. The new project meant working with a bigger team, which made me nervous. Could I trust them? I implemented strict protocols, sharing only what was necessary. Hargrove noticed my caution and nodded approvingly. "You're learning," he said. That was the highest praise I'd ever gotten from him. The new project consumed my days, but Clara's betrayal lingered in my thoughts. I started noticing small things, whispers in the break room, sidelong glances during meetings. Paranoia, maybe, but I couldn't shake it. I dug deeper into the email archives, finding more evidence of Clara and Tom's plot. They'd been planning it for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It wasn't just about the promotion, it was personal. Clara had resented my success, my drive. Tom had fed that resentment, promising her a cut of his bonus if they succeeded. It was a calculated move, and I'd been blind to it. I shared the emails with Hargrove, who promised to handle Tom discreetly. I didn't ask for details, I just wanted to move on. As the project progressed, I found my rhythm again. The team was solid, and the work was challenging but rewarding. I started to relax, but never fully. The memory of that blank screen in the conference room was seared into my mind. I became meticulous, documenting every step, saving every draft. My colleagues noticed, some calling me obsessive behind my back. I didn't care. Obsession had saved my career. Hargrove praised the project's early results, and I felt a spark of pride. But I also felt the weight of expectation. One wrong move, and I could lose it all again. Clara's absence was a constant reminder of that. I wondered where she was now, if she regretted her actions. Part of me hoped she did. One day, I got an email from an unknown address. It was Clara. No subject line, just a single paragraph. She apologized, saying she'd been pressured by Tom, that she hadn't meant to hurt me. She asked for forgiveness, maybe even a reference for a new job. I stared at the screen, my emotions a tangle of anger and pity. I didn't respond. What could I say? She'd nearly destroyed me, and a few words wouldn't erase that. I forwarded the email to HR, just in case. They advised me to block her, and I did. But her words stayed with me, a ghost from the past. I focused on the project, pushing her out of my mind. Success was my revenge, and I was determined to keep climbing. The project launched successfully, earning me another round of praise from Hargrove. He called me into his office and offered me a seat on a new advisory board. It was a huge step, one I hadn't dared dream of. I accepted, but my mind was still on Clara's email. Why had she reached out now? Was it guilt, or another ploy? I'd never know, and I told myself it didn't matter. The corporate world didn't reward sentimentality. I had to stay sharp, stay focused. My new role meant more visibility, more responsibility, and more enemies. I could feel the eyes on me, waiting for a misstep. But I was ready. Clara's betrayal had hardened me, made me a better player in this game. Tom left the company a month later, quietly, with no announcement. I heard through the grapevine he'd been encouraged to resign. Hargrove's doing, no doubt. I felt a quiet satisfaction, but it was fleeting. The corporate ladder was still there, steep and unforgiving. I threw myself into the advisory board, learning to navigate its politics. Every decision felt like a chess move, every ally a potential threat. I kept my report close, a reminder of how close I'd come to falling. My new secretary, Emily, was proving herself, but I never let my guard down. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. The office felt like a battlefield, but I was armed now, ready for whatever came next. Months later, I ran into Clara at a conference. She looked tired, older, her spark gone. We locked eyes for a moment, and she quickly looked away. I felt nothing, no anger, no pity, just emptiness. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. I walked past her, joining my colleagues at a panel discussion. My report was being cited as a case study, a testament to my comeback. I smiled, shaking hands, playing the part. But inside, I was always watching, always waiting for the next betrayal. The corporate world had taught me that much. Success wasn't just about talent, it was about survival. And I was a survivor. The advisory board role opened new doors, but it also exposed me to new dangers. Every meeting was a test, every colleague a potential rival. I learned to read people better, to spot the subtle signs of ambition or deceit. Hargrove became a mentor of sorts, guiding me through the corporate maze. He never mentioned Clara or Tom again, but his actions spoke volumes. He valued loyalty, but he prized competence more. I made sure to deliver both. My report, now a company benchmark, was a constant reminder of my worth. But it was also a warning. Never get comfortable. I backed up my work obsessively, shared only what was necessary, and kept my circle small. A year after the incident, I was thriving, but the scars remained. I'd climbed higher than I'd ever thought possible, but the cost was steep. I trusted no one fully, not even Emily, who'd proven herself time and again. The corporate world was a game of shadows, and I'd learned to play it well. Clara's betrayal had been a brutal lesson, but it had made me stronger. I'd survived her sabotage, Hargrove's scrutiny, and my own doubts. Now I was untouchable, or so I hoped. The report, framed on my wall, was a symbol of my victory. But it was also a reminder. In this world, you're only as good as your last move. And I was ready for the next one. The company grew, and so did my responsibilities. I was now leading multiple projects, each one a chance to prove myself. Hargrove's trust in me was clear, but it came with expectations. Every success raised the bar higher, and I felt the pressure daily. I started mentoring younger employees, passing on the lessons I'd learned the hard way. Trust, but verify. Back up your work. Watch your back. They listened, wide-eyed, unaware of how brutal the corporate world could be. I envied their innocence, but I didn't sugarcoat the truth. Clara's betrayal had changed me, and I wanted them to be ready. My report was still talked about, a legend in the company. But I never let it define me. I was more than one moment, one win. One evening, I found an old USB drive in my desk drawer. It was the one I'd given Clara, the one with the original report. I plugged it in, curious, and found a hidden folder. Inside were drafts of my report, but with subtle changes, numbers tweaked, conclusions altered. Clara's work, no doubt, meant to undermine me further. I felt a chill, realizing how deep her plan had gone. I deleted the folder, but the discovery stayed with me. She'd been thorough, calculating, and I'd been blind. I shared the find with Hargrove, who nodded grimly. "You're lucky," he said. "Not everyone gets a second chance." I knew he was right. I'd survived, but others might not. The advisory board became my new battleground, a place where alliances shifted daily. I learned to navigate its politics, to read between the lines of every smile, every handshake. My colleagues respected me, but I knew better than to trust them fully. Clara's betrayal had taught me that ambition could turn anyone into an enemy. I kept my work airtight, my backup secure. Emily was a great secretary, but I never shared more than I had to. The corporate world rewarded caution, and I'd become its master. Hargrove noticed, often pulling me aside to discuss strategy. He saw me as a protégé, someone who'd learned the game the hard way. I was grateful, but wary. Even mentors could have agendas. A new hire, Sarah, reminded me of Clara, bright, eager, always smiling. I caught myself watching her closely, looking for signs of deceit. It wasn't fair, but I couldn't help it. Clara had left a mark, a distrust that lingered in every interaction. Sarah proved herself over time, but I never fully relaxed. I trained her meticulously, sharing only what was necessary. She noticed my caution but didn't question it. The office was a different place now, leaner, more competitive. Hargrove's zero-tolerance policy for betrayal had set a new tone. My report was still a benchmark, cited in training sessions. But I was focused on the future, on staying one step ahead. At a company retreat, I overheard a conversation about Clara. She'd started her own consulting firm, but it was struggling. Part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. Her betrayal had cost her more than it had cost me. I'd moved on, climbing higher, while she was stuck rebuilding. The retreat was a chance to network, to solidify my place in the company. I played the part, smiling, shaking hands, sharing ideas. But I was always watching, always listening. The corporate world was a chessboard, and I was learning to think 3 moves ahead. My report had been my opening gambit, but the game was far from over. I was ready for the next challenge. Hargrove retired a year later, and his replacement was a wild card, a young, ambitious exec named Laura. She was sharp, but her style was different, less predictable. I had to adapt quickly, proving myself all over again. Laura praised my work, but her eyes were always searching, testing. I doubled down on my caution, keeping my team tight and my backup secure. The memory of Clara's betrayal was a constant reminder. No one was above suspicion. My new role on the advisory board gave me influence, but it also made me a target. I could feel the undercurrents of ambition in every meeting, every email. The corporate world never stopped testing you. I was ready, but I was tired. One day, I found a note on my desk, handwritten and signed. "Watch your back," it said. My heart raced as I scanned the office, but no one met my eyes. Was it a prank, or something more? I showed it to Laura, who took it seriously, launching a quiet investigation. Nothing came of it, but the note stayed with me. Clara's betrayal had made me paranoid, and this didn't help. I tightened my circle even further, sharing less, watching more. My projects were succeeding, my reputation solid, but the note was a reminder. The higher you climb, the harder you can fall. I kept my report framed, a symbol of my resilience. But it was also a warning. The game never ends. Laura called me into her office one day, her expression unreadable. She'd found evidence of a leak, sensitive data shared with a competitor. It wasn't me, but the timing of the note made me wonder. Was someone setting me up again? I shared everything I knew, including the note. Laura nodded, promising to handle it. Days later, a junior exec was let go, caught red-handed. The office buzzed with the news, and I felt a strange relief. It wasn't about me, but it could have been. I doubled my efforts, ensuring my work was untouchable. Clara's betrayal had taught me to expect the worst, and I was prepared. Laura watched me closely, impressed by my vigilance. I was proving myself, one careful step at a time. The company hit a rough patch, with layoffs looming. My position was safe, but the tension was palpable. I mentored my team, helping them navigate the uncertainty, but I kept my distance emotionally. Clara's betrayal had made me wary of getting too close. I focused on results, delivering projects that kept the board happy. Laura leaned on me more, trusting my judgment. It felt good, but I never forgot the note, the whispers, the game. My report was still a legend, a story told to new hires. But I was more than that moment now. I was a survivor, a player in a world where trust was a risk. I'd learned to play the game, and I was good at it. Looking back, Clara's betrayal was a turning point. It shattered my naivety, forced me to grow up fast. I'd climbed higher than I'd ever dreamed, but the cost was steep. I trusted less, loved less, lived less. The corporate world had hardened me, made me a sharper version of myself. My report, framed on my wall, was a badge of honor, but also a scar. Hargrove's quick action had saved me, but it was my own resilience that kept me going. I was ready for whatever came next. Another project, another rival, another note. The game never stopped, but neither did I. I'd survived Clara, Tom, and the corporate jungle. And I'd keep surviving, one careful step at a time. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this wild ride, please subscribe to our channel for more epic workplace dramas.